On this episode, we discuss hybrid learning, AI in the classroom, and trade shows. All that and more on EdTech. EdTech episode 122, the teacherless classroom. Hello, AV friends, and welcome to another episode of EdTech. Today, we have with us our regular panel of awesome higher ed AV professionals. Ernie Bailey, hello.
Hello, Erin. It's great to be back again.
Absolutely. And Rob Rasberry.
Hey, Erin, the kids are back and we're just loving fall, aren't we?
Absolutely. And Scott Tiner.
Hey, everyone. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. So everyone is hopefully, except for those couple of schools out there that are still on quarters that get a little bit later of a start, most of us are kind of in the full swing of fall already. So it's good to be back, and away we go. So we're going to start off the discussion this episode with the 5 keys to work from home success in the new hybrid normal. This one was written by David Albright on AVNation.tv. So be seen, be heard, be connected, be productive, be comfortable. Those are pretty much the 5 keys. And what can the higher ed managers use? What can we take away from these work from home best practices to help make remote learning more successful, or even the few team members that can maybe work from home here or there be, more part of the team?
Well, Erin, I think those are really 2 completely different things, whether we're dealing with our students or our staff. We have a technical support team that is all work from home. And looking at this list, it looks like what we've tried to do to make them successful. As far as being comfortable, we pretty much leave that on them. If you're going to work from home, you set up your workstation or whatever. We do provide the computer workstation, but as far as their furniture and everything else goes, they're responsible for that. The be connected and be productive are the big parts that we push for work from home. If you're going to work from home, for the AV support team, most of that work really needs to be on site so you can get to a classroom to provide assistance. We do occasionally have someone who, for some personal reasons might need to work from home for a day or two. And we do try to accommodate that. But as far as the productive part, they're required to give us a report of what they did while they worked at home, because, how many classes did you support? And how many calls did you take, and see how that lines up against the reports that we get from the different software reporting deals. But the be seen and be heard, I think for any of our workers, that is important. You need to be able to see each other occasionally. You need to be heard, and that leads into being connected. Hybrid situation, like I said, we prefer our people to be on site most of the time, so they do connect. But that way, if they are working from home for a short period of time, they are already connected with their coworkers. They're familiar with who they are and the different work areas. So if they're needing to provide support. On the student side, I think the connected, the be seen, and the be heard are all also very important. We got into that in the early stages of remote classes, not necessarily students taking classes from home, but when we first opened up a second campus, and we had one set of faculty, so students, a good portion of each cohort was on a remote site, and I've probably mentioned this on one of these calls in the past, but we got into an accreditation issue with one of our colleges because a student said, I'm not getting the same experience as the ones in the classroom with the instructor. And we asked them to explain the difference. And they said, well, when the student in front of the instructor asks a question, he calls them by name. But when I ask a question, even if he knows me, he doesn't call me by name. And we thought this was interesting, and we went back to the instructor, and he said, well, the monitor I have to see the FAR students is small and not real close to me. I can't recognize the student who's speaking. If I don't know their voice, I can't, I don't have enough of their face, good enough picture of their face. So we ended up redesigning the classrooms with large monitors, high resolution monitors, and we improved the cameras on the far side as well. So now when Dr. Light calls on a student at the far side, he can call them by name, and they feel connected again. So that was something we didn't think about. We made sure you can see the students at the far side, and that was our first goal. But I think even now, with more students working from home or from Starbucks or wherever they happen to be taking their class, they need to be seen, and they need to know they're being seen and recognized by the other students and by the instructors. So I think that's a big thing that we have to work with. And as technology managers, we can make sure that happens. The instructor is able to see the students. That's been a big part of our selection of different teaching, remote teaching platforms, whether it's Zoom, Teams, Blackboard Collaborate, whatever else, is, how many images can we have on the screen? How can we make sure that, they're recognizable, that the instructor can see everybody, but also recognize the one that's speaking?
Ernie certainly has covered most of what this conversation is about, right? And I think that how you relate this to the classroom is thinking about the student experience. This article is mostly about how do I, as a remote worker, make sure I'm relevant and involved in my business. And we use these same things, right? Be seen, be heard. A student needs to be engaged, even if they're remote or if it's on a recording. And so making sure that faculty member can clearly be seen, what they're doing and teaching can clearly be seen, that they can clearly be heard, that there's good lighting, and do something that engages a student and moves them away from that talking head on a screen.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that both Scott and Ernie have said. So one of the things is your screen. You can't have a small little screen and you're working with that, whether you're in the classroom or even at home. You need to have a larger screen. I think as far as workers go, and even instructors, find a comfortable space for yourself. Find a space that you're comfortable with. You're not moving around or adjusting things and, in the middle of the class or doing a meeting. Find some place where you consistently have sort of a good setup and you're able to, be comfortable and talk and be seen and have the best video quality that you can, although I am somewhat of a suspect on that, because sometimes you run into a meeting, you have your laptop, you're in a different room, so sometimes it gets, sort of bad. But at least if they can see you, and then if the video's poor, make sure your audio's good, in a meeting. So that's very important. But I mean, having a safe space and a set space set up for things that are more structured and set up like classes or set meetings and set times is very important. It's interesting. I sort of not going on a big tangent here, but I think Scott and Ernie run into the same thing, and you as well, Aaron, where I have two groups. So my one group is the classroom group, and remote work, that doesn't really happen. On my collaboration side, my Zoom streaming video production, they have had to use more remote and hybrid, and it's much more flexible, because if you're managing a Zoom meeting, you don't have to be on site to do that. If you're managing a Teams meeting, you don't necessarily have to be on site. So there's two different, I would guess, areas of concern that use that. But, again, the basic baseline is the best you can do with the video, the best you can do with the audio certainly helps. And also, I think, as well, large screen, two screens maybe, so that if, say, the instructor may be at home and can't see, what the student's ID or what their name is, having two monitors might be, with a docking station might be a solution for that.
Yeah. When kind of post-COVID and we were all trying to scramble and figure out how to do some hybrid learning, I always thought of, audio, like as long as you can hear each other and like be able to hear and talk, like that was the most important thing. But it's like now that we're that much more removed from that point, it's like, okay, yeah, now we have to have that video, and making sure that those experiences for the students are equitable. And so, yeah, so we really do have to pay more attention to all of it as a whole, as opposed to just kind of these little elements of audio, video, the hardware, and those sorts of things. And now it's all kind of like, it has to be one kind of all encompassing solution, so to speak. So to really make it okay for students to learn that way, because otherwise it's just, I could see how students could be upset by that, by not getting that equitable experience compared to others who may be in person.
Make sure your PowerPoints and your content are legible. That's the only other one I was going to mention. If it's too small to be seen, on your laptop, it's probably too small for your remote participants to see it too. So that's the only other thing I was going to add.
Oh yeah. Don't even get me started about PowerPoints. Through my grad coursework, through each class, we kind of, talk a little bit about presentations and stuff like that. And, but one of the communications classes, we did like a whole module essentially on like making presentations and PowerPoints, appropriate for presenting. And like, it's amazing the number of people who just want to put a whole bunch of text on it, and then it becomes pretty much illegible at that point. But yeah, so it's like, make sure you're brushing up on your PowerPoint and presentation skills when you're teaching remotely or even in person. Let's move on to the next one. This one comes to us from AV Magazine. Students in UK's first teacherless classroom taught by AI. So, is the future classroom really teacherless? What do we think here?
I thought it was interesting because I thought the headline of this probably looking to grab some attention, right? Because if you read the article, I don't know that that's necessarily the goal of the classroom or this classroom is to remove the teacher. But I actually think it's a very interesting use of technology and particularly AI, because it talks about understanding and learning very specifically where a student is having trouble on something and really going back over that and learning how to show a different student how to do something. So it really provides some kind of one-on-one assistance for a student that a teacher may not have the time to do, or a public school may not have the time in the future to spend with one student. Of course, whether they'd have the money to spend on AI to do that, which is probably more expensive than a staff member or teacher at the moment, is another question. But I think any one of us, I'd be shocked if any one of us did not say that this idea of person-to-person interaction, that idea of a connection to a teacher, that idea of experience that a teacher has is no longer valuable or ever should not be valuable. Love to hear some reasoning on that, because I think this is a great tool. I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to see more of it be accessible. But I don't think it should ever replace a teacher.
Yeah, I totally agree with Scott on that. This is a fascinating article, and maybe where the best use of AI is maybe as a tutor, maybe as a side, instruction, if a student is having issues and not understanding, maybe AI can take a look, okay, well, this is what, they missed or this, but that human factor, the personalities in teaching and the human touch really are, to me, a necessity. When we go back and think about instructors that, we really learned stuff from, or we were really, focused on and were happy and enjoyed it, that's that human personality, that touch, that mannerism, the way they teach. Could AI do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe 100 years down the road, who knows? Maybe, but I totally agree that the human factor always and should be a part of teaching, in my opinion.
I like the idea, but I see it more as a supplement to the teacher, as opposed to the reading or the watching the videos that you may be assigned before class, maybe the AI component, and then that it can do, like it discusses here, see what you seem to be struggling with. If you're trying to repeat something 2 or 3 times, it can give you more in-depth information about that. Or if it looks like you're going through something fast, it might be able to bring in some additional information that might be helpful for that one person. But no, when I started reading this, kind of like Rob was saying, I thought of 2 or 3 professors that, were completely different, Western Civ class, any type of history class that was strictly a lecture, it could have been, I guess back when I was doing it, it could have been filmed and projected. But this might be more than sitting there and watching a video, watching a recorded instructor giving a lecture. This might be able to replace that where we saw that, but once again, not as the primary teaching method, I don't think.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting, but I appreciated this article because at Infocom, I spoke on a panel for like the future trends of education and stuff like that. And one of the things that, of course, AI came up, and I had said that probably one of the best uses of AI would be in a similar vein as this, but it was more, my thinking of it was more as a tool to assess students and find out, like, create custom lesson plans based on their learning style, not to replace an instructor by any means, but to help kind of guide them through curriculum, as opposed to everybody kind of getting served the same exact thing, because we know everybody learns differently. So why not use, a tool like AI to kind of discern out these different, ways that the kids could be taught a little more customly, according to their learning style. But yeah, definitely not going to replace an instructor, especially K-12. Like there's no way that, kids growing up, they need that social aspect. They need another, somebody to look to. And like my favorite classes, it was pretty much because of the teachers. So I feel like that'd be tough to remove for kids.
I guess really quickly, it's not per se related, but the place where AI could come in handy is, I know that we have to go through our trainings, Title IX, these, cybersecurity, these kinds of things. There are generalized sections where I suppose you could use an AI to verify that someone's completed a short training or maybe a really, really basic course. But 95% of the time, yeah, we have to have the instructor, the human instructor.
That's actually a good use too. Yeah, for those sorts of training type things. All right. The last one comes to us from AV Technology, written by Cindy Davis. So we read Cindy's coveted products from CEDIA 2024. So, for those who are listening who may not know, CEDIA is the Global Industry Association and central touch point for smart home technology. They provide their members with cutting edge education. They develop standards to high levels of professionalism, et cetera, et cetera. So not quite in line with what, a higher ed tech manager would normally attend. They have started co-locating the commercial integrator show with CEDIA, making it maybe a little more appropriate, except for the fact that it's timed right at the beginning of our semesters. But what, did you see anything social media wise that came out from those shows that really stood out? Or, is there value in, higher ed AV tech managers attending shows that may not necessarily fit the usual sort of show that we would go to?
I think, yes, there can be value. I mean, I'm always looking for anything new in technology and how can I implement that in our classrooms or lecture halls. But at the same time, I have to weigh my budget, my travel budget, especially, where am I going to get the most value? Do I go to Infocom or something on that level where I'm seeing things really aimed more towards higher ed, and probably able to see more things that would be useful. If I had leftover budget money, and I could go or send someone to something like CEDIA. Would I? Yes, I think I would, but right now it would not be a priority. And if one of my techs wanted to go, or maybe they were going in that general direction and say, I'd like to go to this. And it might be one of those, I can pay for your registration if you're already going to Las Vegas or wherever it's going to be. I'll even give you the time off. You could do it on company time, not have to use your PTO for this. But, am I going to pay to send 3 or 4 people to go to that versus Infocom? No. And, nothing wrong with the show. I think it's a great deal, but it's not geared towards what we're doing. So that's, like I said, I can see both sides, but I have to weigh my budget versus the expected return.
Yeah, it complete agree with Ernie. And time. I mean, there are so many of these shows that go on throughout the year. Certainly, if CEDIA continues to happen at the beginning of September, nobody will ever go from my school. We have no allowed vacation during that time, and certainly no travel. I mean, there was another training sessions a person in my team wanted to take during that time that we said we just couldn't happen. So it's time along with money and figuring out how often can you have somebody who, as we already talked about, is a hands-on person and needs to be there traveling to conferences. So you've got to make smart choices.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. I don't see, even though there's always a connection, it's like, LG or Samsung and all the major manufacturers have their commercial division, they have their consumer division. There is always some type of crossover, but for us, there's not really much value unless something amazing and superlative comes out that you hear from word of mouth and you say, maybe you should go check this out. No, we're in a different arena. So, we are dealing with, value, commercial quality, making sure that the tech in our, spaces lasts. Again, there might be a miracle device that across, somewhere in the consumer arena that we might use, but in general, I'm not sure that it really works for us very well.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting to like a show like Consumer Electronics, that show. Like, it's interesting to see some of the things that come out of there, because it seems like it gets the attention of people sometimes, and then it makes its way more commercial. But it is, with our budgets and timelines and stuff, it is really hard to justify things like that. And definitely timing wise. This year, luckily, NAB New York is happening early in October. And so that's at least close enough that some of my team are going to make their way up there. Because now that we're doing so much more live production stuff, it's steering a little more closer to things that are available for broadcast. So that's a show that kind of makes a little bit more sense for some of my team members to attend. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like it's, especially time wise, this show is in particular is a little tough to sell, but some things might not, they might work depending on budgets and people availability. So this was another great show. Thank you guys for joining me. And so if after listening to this, anyone wants to get in touch with you, how might they, Ernie?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And Rob?
LinkedIn.
And Scott?
You can find me on LinkedIn, on X, and over at Rave Pubs.
And as for me, you can find me on LinkedIn, on X at Smearin_off_ice, and each month here on AVNation's EdTech podcast that can be found on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.